Good morning, everyone. I can save everyone time by saying that I agree 100% with the presentation of Dr. Muhi, but I think I need to say more. Certainly, I think Shafia, we're old friends, gave an excellent presentation by telling us about the importance of maritime cooperation, how ASEAN is really in a maritime environment, by taking us through the institutions and the actual activities that ASEAN has been engaged in with respect to maritime cooperation issues and challenges. And she also gave, I think, a very balanced and as I said, I agree with the assessments, no? Somewhat cautionary perspective on how we should not be expecting too much from ASEAN, because the organization, despite or perhaps because of 50 years of existence and working together, also has still many challenges. The most important probably would be in the lack of effective implementation of many of the agreements. No? So ASEAN, I think, in a sense, knows what needs to be done, but in some cases doesn't have the resources to undertake its aspirations and ambitions. There are a lot of differences among the member states on certain important issues also that will need to be overcome. No? And applying that to the prospects of ASEAN becoming a maritime community, I think Dr. Muhibat has done us a service by pointing out that there will be challenges along the way. No? Now let me just add a few things of my own. When we speak of ASEAN as a maritime community, I think so far in the sessions that we've heard mention of ASEAN maritime community and ASEAN as a maritime security community. The focus of today's discussions is also it's a maritime security symposium. So maybe it's important also to see that there is somewhat of a distinction. Maritime community would encompass of course, the three pillars of ASEAN community building. And indeed, it's not only maritime security that we worry about, but the maritime economies as well. And the fact that as a sociocultural community, the peoples of ASEAN also have many shared challenges where the maritime environment is relevant. For instance, on issues of disaster, humanitarian assistance, and these kinds of issues, maritime environment protection, human security, migration, across the seas. These are also concerns of a maritime nature that ASEAN is very much interested in and has been working on, although perhaps not in the maritime context. So that's maritime community writ large, I guess, for ASEAN. The eminent scholar Wang Gungwu has spoken of ASEAN as being of two mindsets. While we do say that ASEAN is maritime, there are only some countries who carry the maritime mindset in ASEAN. And you have also the other half of ASEAN, which have a continental mindset. They don't worry about the maritime part of ASEAN, the issues of law of the sea, maritime resource issues, as much as the rest of us do. No? And that also, I think, is going to be a challenge. No? So you have the countries and the peoples with the maritime mindset, and those who don't. No? The continental part of ASEAN, I suppose, worry more, for instance, on Mekong issues rather than ocean issues. So it also has to do, it's similar in many ways, no? But with a different context. No? And for ASEAN unity to be built around maritime issues also requires, states like the Philippines to understand the concerns of these mainland states. No? Professor Wang Gungwu also pointed out that Southeast Asia is really very strategic. Going forward, we will be seeing the rise of new major naval powers in the region. So Southeast Asia being between India and China, China having declared its aspirations to become a global maritime power. India also having a sophisticated navy and potentially expanding its economic and security interests to our part of the world means that this is something that we in Southeast Asia also have to prepare for whatever the implications will be economically and security-wise. No? So to take a more strategic perspective on ASEAN's maritime connectivity and cooperation, I think in this context would also be quite helpful. No? There were many points raised. I think what would be also worth mentioning is the responsibility of ASEAN and Southeast Asian countries individually to translate the international agreements and principles no, into regional cooperation projects. No? This is something that, while ASEAN may not always be united, it does have a responsibility. For instance, when we talk of UNCLOS, when we talk of the IMO agreements, these are already agreed upon, and regionalizing perhaps an approach to make sure that they are more effectively implemented would also be, should also be considered, especially with respect to issues of good order at sea, sustainable resource development, and of course safety at sea, and the rest of that. No? So that is perhaps one thing that ASEAN might wish to look at. And many other cooperation issues, I agree with the speaker that forcing it on ASEAN as a whole may not be the way to go, but the potential for unilateral cooperation is much more enticing because certain groups of countries, 3 or 4 or 6 or 7, who do have major stakes in many of these issues, stand a better chance of going forward than, and this is again a modality that I suggest ASEAN has long been ready for, no? And should be looking at. No? It does not diminish, it does not intend to diminish the influence of ASEAN itself or the importance of ASEAN itself. It just wants to make ASEAN more successful by implementing, by actual, engaging in actual, more effective cooperation. No? Okay, so minilateralization, I guess, of some of the cooperation agreements. No? Okay, I think especially seeing Justice Carpio here, I think I cannot avoid but mention the South China Sea issue and the impact of the arbitration. No? We are looking at a post-arbitration. I would suggest that we are looking at the post-arbitration South China Sea situation. No? The arbitration ruling has essentially said that there is no 9-dash line as far as history and law are concerned. No? So the 9-dash line conceptually has been I think, a constraint to ASEAN maritime cooperation. No? The idea, the expectation that there is another big power who considers itself a major stakeholder, is ready to take actions that may disadvantage the rest of the region, deserves a second look. No? So without this notion of a 9-dash line, what new possibilities might there be for ASEAN to go ahead no, and undertake many of the initiatives no, for cooperation, for connectivity as well, that it should have been undertaken or that it could have been undertaken. I recall for instance, the workshops since the early 90s organized by the Indonesian government with the support of some Canadian organizations. We had been looking at so many potential, real projects for cooperation, and we simply could not move ahead because of realpolitik considerations. No? So I think the agenda is there. Again, it's a question of understanding how the environment has evolved and changed, and identifying new opportunities, no? From recent developments. The environment is nonetheless very challenging, no? Because geopolitical, the rivalry of the major powers, no? Is in a way going to dampen efforts of organizations like ASEAN, and I would even say the new geopolitical environment threatens to marginalize ASEAN and in its own region, basically, you know, and maybe most especially in the maritime arena. So I would also be somewhat cautious, not cautious in engaging in the new activities, but take a more strategic perspective and see how ASEAN itself, this time as a security community, no? And potentially as a maritime security community, plays a very important role in the future of the regional security order, and how what ASEAN does now can also impact on the role of the big powers in the region. If we speak of ASEAN as a maritime security community, as was also mentioned this morning, then obviously it is a set of the ASEAN political security community, and it supports the agenda. And part of the agenda is to contribute to building a building a regional security order where ASEAN continues to play a central role. Therefore, developments that will marginalize ASEAN in Southeast Asia and in the oceans of Southeast Asia, I think will need to be resisted, and ASEAN has to strategize in that context as well. No? Okay, maritime connectivity. Again, I think this is an important contribution from Dr. Mhibat's presentation. The action plan for ASEAN connectivity has been there for a while, as was noted, not too successfully implemented. It preceded the so-called One Belt, One Road initiative of China, and many would say that China even borrowed the agenda of connectivity, no? And repackaged it into its own Belt and Road initiative, or the One Belt, One Road program. Now, there's nothing wrong with China wanting to connect with the regions. It certainly has been working mostly at a bilateral level in providing economic inducements for countries to partner with it for infrastructure building and so on. No? And that's fine. No? Now, ASEAN having its own program of connectivity and pushing it more seriously will, I think, be of greater potential benefit for a number of reasons. No? One is multilateralism. No? So the virtues, no? Despite the weaknesses also, the virtues of multilateralism in terms of transparency, governance mechanisms, no? Inclusivity. No? I think these characteristics for connectivity programs will be far superior, potentially, no? Than perhaps what China tries to pursue, no? Through its mainly bilateral Belt and Road programs. No? As a matter of fact, I think ASEAN should try to entice China to expand its own thinking on Belt and Road, to look at multilateral arrangements and mechanisms. No? and that will potentially solve even some of the reservations of neighboring countries, no, in participating in the Belt and Road. No? Um, okay, what else? Yeah. Well, that said, as I mentioned, there is nothing wrong with participation in the Belt and Road initiatives of China. The one reason that ASEAN has not been as successful with its own connectivity has been lack of resources. No? And this is what China offers aside from its own technology and so on. No? But if ASEAN continues to value its autonomy, no? And still wants to pursue a regional integration well into the future, then it certainly has to take more seriously its role in the region, and most especially, as has been mentioned this morning, on maritime cooperation and maritime connectivity. Okay, so I think I'll limit my remarks to those. Thank you.